Okay, hello everyone. It is May 22nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. This is the meeting of the Deconstruction Subcommittee of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and which includes members of the Sustainability Committee as well. It's a special meeting for the town of Mansfield, these committees. So first of all, thank you to the folks from both committees who volunteered to serve on this ad hoc committee. Why don't we do quick introductions, I guess, because we're coming from different places. So my name is Lynn Stoddard, and I serve on Mansfield Sustainability Committee. Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
I am Katie Fatoni. I am a representative from Planning and Zoning.
And Susanna is having technical issues. So looks like Susanna Beckman from the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Nice to meet you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And Ginny.
Yep, I'm here. Ginny from sitting in on this meeting, and I will take the minutes.
Thanks, Ginny. So let's see. We don't have any previous meeting minutes. We've called the meeting to order, and basically this committee came about because there's interest from both of our committees, or this subcommittee came about because there's interest for both of these committees about deconstruction waste. And the Sustainability Committee had a representative from the Center for Ecotechnology come a couple of months ago and talk to us about the issue. And I think we're looking ahead, imagining that there could be some deconstruction of maybe one or two of the old elementary schools that are no longer in service now that the new elementary school is opened. And just wanting, as the town's looking at all of its facilities, wanting to have something in place that would require deconstruction of town buildings and ultimately entertain some requirements or at least encouragement for deconstruction of any building in town, possibly through a regulation or ordinance. So I guess I'll just start. I mean, I was just elected to chair the meeting, we're told. So as I recall from the Center for Ecotechnology, one of the pieces of advice they gave us, which I think is a good one, is don't try to change everything at once. It might be really hard to change a regulation in the zoning regulations. It takes a while. So we may want to consider our own town buildings first and a best practice there, with the full intent of moving into longer term or even starting them together, but not holding up on the town building part while we're looking at the whole of the picture. And Susanna Everett has joined us. Hi, Susanna.
I'm so sorry I'm late.
No worries. It's good to see you.
Hi, everyone.
So Ginny, I think you've sent us a couple documents to look at. That was my recollection of where we started, and please build upon that or clarify.
Well, I do have the document practice of deconstruction. I have that manual up if we want to go through certain parts of it. It is a guidance document for town governments or groups like this. So if you think that would be helpful to they have some graphics and charts in there that might help to this group to kind of identify where you want to go
Is this
with
the
this.
Center for Eco-Technology document you sent
Yes, it
out?
is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would be wonderful. People can pull it up if they want, or Ginny would you like us to pull it up? Or do you want to share screen? There
Well,
you go. You're sharing screen.
here's the sharing.
Great.
You can see that okay?
Yes, we can.
All
Yeah.
right. So, one of the things that I have learned in terms of our area in Connecticut is that there are more outlets for residential remodeling, for instance, than for commercial materials. So there really, for instance, there's a couple habitats for humanity. And I had sent you along a map. I don't know if anybody looked at that, a map of the places in Connecticut where there are outlets for materials. So the Habitats for Humanity are the closest places to us. There's the Reconstruction Center in New Britain, which will take more than just residential material. I mean, the Habitat would probably take more than just residential material, but it's smaller, the capacity is smaller. So for commercial outlets are a little more challenging because we don't have the outlets. But these are the chapters in this manual. If you want me to scroll to page 4, I can do that, and we can look at different types of deconstruction, if that would be helpful.
That'd be great, Ginny.
Okay. And what's nice, this isn't page 4, but what's nice is it gives you examples of different locations around the country that have ordinances, smart building codes, a program. Boston, Massachusetts has something going on that isn't, it's not an ordinance, but it's a real initiative to encourage deconstruction. And on page 4, these are the different types of deconstruction. So we have adaptive reuse. So the best option, like nothing is done with the building removal. It's renovated instead and used for some purpose. And then all the way down to full deconstruction, where you're salvaging all the materials with value and outlets. So that is the most beneficial thing, but you can do soft strip. So you're taking out some of the things that cabinets, doors, windows, architectural features, and finding homes for them. And even less impactful, but something that is considered part of the demolition is removing the furniture before the demolition happens. So even that is considered part of the deconstruction pathway. Would you like me to scroll down and look at important considerations? I can do that.
Yeah, Ginny, I think this is really helpful to just kind of walk through it together. So I appreciate it.
Okay, sure.
One thing that I knew was because I watched This Old House on TV, on CPTV. And one of the things that Boston was also, it wasn't an ordinance, but it was a strong, I don't know how you'd use it. They had somebody from a salvage company come in. And that person from the salvage company could actually tell the homeowner, okay, you're doing remodeling in your house. This is what, this, and this, and this, you could actually sell. And they could make money on it. And it was, yeah, it was giving a value to some stuff. And again, it was putting it into a reusable recycling type of situation. But this was the city of Boston, and everybody that was doing reconstruction, renovations and stuff like that were required by their permit to have this salvage person come in. It was good that way.
And here it lists the Boston, Massachusetts process. So they might be a good resource for this group. So this is considerations of what kind of policies or incentives do you want to have? Like, for instance, San Antonio, Texas, it was really the folks who were interested in keeping the old homes from being demolished in San Antonio that were behind the deconstruction process. So it was to save those older homes and a historic preservation. That's what I mean. Yeah. So there can be different entities that are pushing for this. So it gives you different parameters. So there could be policies that fast track permitting for deconstruction. There could be policies that delay the permitting process to allow for deconstruction to be considered. I think those, if the group wanted to explore those, they'd have to examine that kind of piece carefully in order to get the support within the town for that. There are some organizations that actually tie deconstruction with training opportunities. So, for instance, individuals that may have a hard time finding a job, getting employment, may participate in a training program where they're taught how to deconstruct a home. So there is skill building, and it's tied into, for instance, former incarcerated individuals is one example. And so the opportunities it lists, and you can click on these and it takes you to the actual resource information to help. So you just tell me if you want me to stop at any point. Addressing the barriers. I think in Mansfield's case, there might be some barriers for minimal internal support, and I'm not sure about personnel capacity, but I don't know that I don't think we have the built out infrastructure. I mean, we might have outlets for residential deconstruction, but probably not for commercial. And as far as the people who would do deconstruction, we don't really know. So, I mean, that might be a starting point for this group, is like finding out who out there as building contractors does some informal deconstruction or formal deconstruction, and they're salvaging materials. I think that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Ginny.
Yeah.
So, yeah, shall we open it up for some discussion and questions or back and forth? What thoughts come to people from just that little overview? I mean, one of what you said in the very beginning, Ginny, about the distinction between residential and commercial and the outlets for those materials is really interesting because it's very different. And so, like, we had a hard time convincing whoever with the school building project to kind of like do, well, it wasn't really deconstruction, but even like reuse of materials from deconstructed buildings. And it makes sense, you know, there's coordinated color scheme and functionality of all the furniture and whatnot, but it might be easier to think about residential. I don't know. I just found that and something I hadn't really thought much about before. What thoughts or kind of questions other people have after right now?
I guess my question is how are we going to enforce it? Is it going to be part of the regulations that when they are building or remodeling a new remodeling a place, building a new place and tearing down the old, are we putting it into the regulations that they have to go through this process first? And how much is it going to cost? That's that. I brought it up with a few friends talking about it, and all they could say was, "Oh, it's going to cost us more money to do renovations. It's going to cost us. It's going to cost more for the contractors to do stuff." That was the only thing I had. Is how are we going to enforce it too?
Okay. Yeah. Good question. Susanna Everett?
I was wondering too about Ginny, your comment, your brief comment, and I don't want to like dive into this, but around internal support. So how we could be supportive of building some more internal support in the town. Again, I know very little about this, but I know like whenever they were when Southeast was getting torn down, that I think if you asked one person, they were doing a fantastic job of, of reusing or renovate, that was a wonderful example. And if you ask someone else, they would say, no, that was really not well done at all. So I think also just, kind of educating, and then obviously to the end point that Katie had of like, if we sort of take some steps forward and try to work on getting our town more committed to doing some of this work, like what's the sort of enforcement piece? But I guess that's my question for you, Ginny, is again, I know I don't want to put you in a funny spot, but it's sort of like, how do we kind of amplify this a little bit more? Again, when I ask questions about this, for example, with the Southeast piece, people, again, I talked to a few people, they were like, oh yeah, we're absolutely, doing all of that. And I don't think that is the case. So that is maybe the question particularly, but getting folks to understand a little bit more, education and then outreach, and yeah.
Well, it's, it's kind of hard to advocate for something when at least in my mind, it's hard to advocate for something when I don't have all the pieces of information. And I think there are some pieces of information that are missing here. Like, who are the contractors that would do this in our town if it was residential or maybe commercial? And do they claim it's deconstruction, or they're just doing this informally, like they see some really good wood and they're not going to throw that in a roll-off dumpster. They're going to reclaim it, you know, and find an outlet for it. It might be in their backyard. I don't know, but like, we don't have that information. That to me is a big question mark. And what was the other one? And then the outlets for the materials. Are they, what kind of capacity do they have? For instance, the Reconstruction Center, what capacity do they have for commercial materials, for instance? So if there are case studies that have been done, and those are there, you can find them through that guidance that I just went through, of where people have saved money, or it was neutral. It was just a lateral transition. So they didn't spend any more on deconstruction, but they were very thoughtful about the things that were taken out of the home that had some value. Joseph DeRisi from Urban Mining, he's very much about, and he's in North Haven, so he's not immediately in our area, but he is in Connecticut. He is very intentional about what items he's going to take out of a home. He does residential deconstruction. And so what he'll do is he will look at a house, and then he'll go out into his sphere of contacts and ask if anybody would like this beautiful mantelpiece from, you know, such and such a place. So he lines up buyers before he touches the house, you know, so that's his process. So I think if there was some groundwork laid, and this committee had a better sense of what's out there and available, then that might be the place to start from. If there isn't, like with Southeast Elementary School, and I wasn't, you know, I was not deeply involved with it, but when I'd inquire about what was being taken, the contractors said that they hired the IRN, which I don't know if they did. You know, I don't know if they actually, which would have taken, they do commercial furniture. So they would have taken the furniture and sold it to third world country. But I'm not sure that actually happened in the end. I know that their recycling was about 50%. I got that information, which isn't, you know, it was useful information to know, like what percentage can be recycled out of building demolition. But I would say that's not fantastic. That really is like, I mean, there was a lot of brick, you know, and that brick did end up going in as, I think, fill, you know, so that was considered a form of reuse. And that probably is why it was so high, you know, the 50, like 5% recycling. So I've probably said a lot. Internal support, they're just, it can't be a lot harder than, you know, there needs to be a path that is not that much more difficult and more costly than the way people already do things. So,
Of course, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you got Ginny and Katie at the document both mentioned Boston and doing it as an incentive, which to me makes a lot of sense as you're learning, line up resources, and you can't require something if the infrastructure is not in place and the contractors and all that. As you're saying, we need to learn all that. But I guess the incentive in those cases was they provided free technical assistance and through their DEP, it says. So yeah, like it seems like they're you kind of need like a state agency or a larger group than just on a town basis to want to do this. Do you know if like, are you still active in CERC, Ginny, the Connecticut Recyclers Coalition? I'm wondering if like,
Oh, CRC, yeah,
yeah,
no,
Yeah.
I'm not. It's transformed to a different kind of organization. Yeah, so I'm not. But CET, the Center for Ecotechnology, would provide free technical assistance, and they did do that with the school, with Southeast Elementary School.
oh, they did?
Yeah, they did. And it was for the soft strip. So the contractors went through the rooms and tried to get evaluated what might be nice furniture. And actually the Bloomfield Habitat for Humanity did pick up some stuff from one of the rooms, but it was very minimal because of just because there was, I don't know, cabinetry that was old, and there wasn't really interest in what was there from the 50s or 60s. So, or 70s. I don't know when it was built. So
Anna Beckman, it looks like you've reemerged. Are you able to talk to us now? Can you come off mute? Oh.
we can't hear you. So can you go to your box?
Give it a
Can you
try.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, talk to us.
Well, I went to Bill's iPad, so, because I couldn't get my Mac to unmute me, so, yeah. I did some research, looking at the different places in the country just to kind of get myself up to speed on, what people do. And apparently San Antonio, Texas is right at the top there, apparently, with this whole deconstructing thing. I heard people's concern about, possibly the cost of this. And so that would mean if somebody came to the town hall and took out a building permit or a deconstructing permit, they would get charged for doing that. And I saw in one of Ginny's, what she sent, that there are ways of working around that. I guess the town would have to make a decision. I'm still a little vague on all the different things that are, you can see the windows, and like Ginny was saying, the cabinetry and doors and things like that. I mean, I've been watching those, the housing up across from the community center there, all the apartments, the buildings that were taken down, and watching the progression of that, I realized that they had taken out all the windows, they had taken out all the doors. I don't know about the cabinets, but then the rest just sort of got knocked down, and I don't know what happened to it. Were all those brick things, did they go somewhere? But this, of course, is state property, right? So it would have been the state of Connecticut that took the lead on the deconstructing, if there was any deconstructing there. There seemed to have been some. And I know what Ginny was saying, that percentages aren't all that high, and that, that percentage of 51% or whatever it was, probably included all the bricks and, that are being used as fill for other, I don't know, but road control, whatever that, they use that for. Yeah, I don't feel that I'm well informed yet, even though I've done reading on this, and I'm trying to go to some towns like San Antonio to read about, you know, how did they get things up to speed, and, you know, kind of what was their process of, you know, getting people interested in it, and how, you know, how come some town, is there any town in Connecticut that has a deconstruction construction mandate? Or
I don't
is
think
that-
so. No,
No,
not that I'm
okay.
aware of.
Okay.
Wow.
You know, one of the things that the Solid Waste Advisory Committee wanted to do was, while the transfer station was the retaining walls were being renovated, to have a building built just for reuse for the swap shop. So it would make a bigger space for the swap shop. So that has been indefinitely put on hold because of staffing and budgeting issues. So, but I am just wondering if there is, well, okay, a grant out there that could fund a building, like a reconstruction center, like what they have in Springfield, Massachusetts, or New Britain, the Reconstruction Center. I know there is a place on Route 14 in South Wyndham, but it's kind of, there really isn't a sign out there, and it isn't clear if anybody's ever there, but I know they have windows and doors and all kinds of things that are not necessarily from deconstruction projects, but they're like overstock items.
Mhm.
So you can go there and buy a window that's brand new. It was, or the sizes were wrong, so it was ordered and it was the wrong size. So you could buy those kinds of things. And I'm just wondering if there were, like, if WAME would be interested in being in on this. I mean, WAME takes household items, but like an expansion of building materials for, and making it like a regional hub. So it wouldn't just be Mansfield, it would be Mansfield, Wyndham, you know, it would serve all Eastern Connecticut. I don't know. I'm just, you know, thinking.
A great idea, like a regional, more local place to, but yeah, that would mean funding, right? So.
Yeah, and it would be, you know, it would be not run by a municipality, or would it be run by a municipality? I mean, like, what? Yeah, it just, construction material is a large part of our total waste stream. And this could really make a dent in construction waste if we had some kind of outlet, like would Habitat for Humanity, for instance, want to take on something like that, expand their Dayville. I think they're in Dayville. Their Dayville operation. I don't know. It's a big idea, but it just seems like it's the piece that, well, and then the other thing is, there the market, you know, would they be able to turn around and sell the items? So I think the margin for these kinds of programs is very slim. But here's some ideas of what this subcommittee might want to do or be interested in doing, is check out, like actually go and, or go to one of the hubs in Springfield. The Eco Building Bargains is a great place to go. They have a lot of materials there and good stuff. Or the Reconstruction in Center, New Britain. So that would be something, or just canvassing the contractors in this area. Like, what are they doing? What's
Yeah.
their level of interest?
Yeah, that's interesting. Ginny, sorry, this is a little bit off task. The person who came to talk to us about this originally, was she in Florence, Mass? Is there also a place there?
She's with CET out of Springfield, Massachusetts,
Okay.
the Center for Eco
And
Technology.
that's where they have the warehouse or
Yes.
the space. Yeah.
Yes, Abby came, talked at
Yeah.
the Sustainability Committee meeting. Yes.
Yeah, so I have been to a lot of these. In fact, we're renovating a house right now and have a room full of kitchen cabinets from the one in Springfield, Mass. And
Oh,
doors and windows from the window place in Wyndham. Yeah, they're
oh,
mostly,
you got something from the place in South Wyndham?
but a bay window there. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
the inventory is like, especially in the window and door place, it's like old. The stuff's is there for years, and you
Mhm.
kind of have to be in the long game. And yeah, CET is cool because the stuff turns over fast. You get full kitchen stuff, and a lot of a lot of that moves quickly if it's nice. Yeah, so I guess like kind of how Springfield isn't that far from us. If you're gonna go buy a set of kitchen cabinets from Home Depot or something, I mean, yeah, you have to be able to get the stuff back to your house, but you do if you're going to Home Depot, you can get it so much cheaper. It doesn't feel like a regional, I mean, it feels like a regional place like that makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in Connecticut. Like, that place gets a lot of stuff. It's a big enough volume that each time you go, there's going to be new stuff. And it's worth it. And the Bloomfield place too has a really pretty big turnover. And they take stuff from like University of Hartford and, like desk chairs and things and desks. So yeah, I guess from my experience from the residential side, it feels like there are a lot of places to look, and maybe it's more of an outreach campaign to homeowners who are doing renovations, and maybe local contractors. I mean, I don't know what they pay, like someone who's doing home remodeling in Mansfield, taking their stuff to the Mansfield transfer station, right? And paying, what do they pay now?
$30 a cubic yard. So it's expensive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's the difference of a drive to Springfield? They'll have to do both because they probably can't get rid of everything in Springfield. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess, like you said, Ginny, maybe talking to some contractors and seeing what they do and what they're aware of. And as far as like the commercial stuff and the town's practices, I didn't realize that. That's great that CET consulted on Southeast. I think maybe getting in earlier would result in more happening. I don't know. So maybe there is enough of support like that to even have something go to the town that there are resources out there on deconstruction, and there are opportunities within town projects probably in some cases, and again, more of maybe an education incentive thing. Maybe it's something to bring up. I was listening to a podcast the other day on climate change and building remodeling and buildings, and the woman said, like, there's this huge campaign about not taking plastic straws, the plastic straw banning thing, and we're throwing away entire buildings and people are not even blinking. And it was just like, wow, that's or plastic bags. Yeah, it's still an issue, but like comparatively, this is a huge, huge thing every time a building goes down. So, yeah, maybe there's an opportunity to like, there's that, Deep has the, what do they call it? The CCSMA, Connecticut Coalition on Strategic Materials Management or something. I don't know if they actually talked much about deconstruction. Deconstruction's like, we don't have a lot of bulky waste sites in Connecticut. So if it's bulky waste like that, that's coming out of a building, it's probably being carted out of state. Well, even MSW is these days, but I don't know. Maybe that I'm just rambling. Like maybe we could bring it up with the CCSMA or the people at Deep and say, are any other towns interested in this? What support do you have? Yeah, they have the thing on their website, but that's not a lot. That's kind of astonishing that we're not aware of any other town in the state that is taking a town stance on this. That's astonishing.
That is
And it
true.
means that's a lot of work for us to do because no one's done that background work on the infrastructure.
There,
We could be the first. We like being the first. That is something I think that our town enjoys. So we could be the first to have some kind of guidance or policy or something. I mean, even just bringing folks' attention to the fact of the process that happened at Southeast, and like knowing what happened there. Like, what did they do with all the stuff at Holiday Mall? Who knows? We have a small sample of stuff. I don't know. It'd be interesting to kind of think about what the avenues are for understanding and examples, and then also maybe potentially some policy via the town council, or I don't know, or our I mean, I don't know what the avenue would be. Or Ginny, yeah.
well, in order to pass the plastic bag ordinance, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee visited businesses because the group thought that if businesses were like going to be really upset with this, we needed to, work with them. And so the way we framed the question was not, do you like this idea, but rather, could you live with it? So it wasn't like you need to be in love with the concept, but could you still navigate without issuing plastic bags? And actually, to our surprise, all of our surprise, overwhelmingly, it was like only one or two businesses said, no, this is a terrible idea. The rest were like, yeah, I'd get on with it. I would live with it. So I'm wondering if the same approach were made with some contractors, if we reached out to contractors and asked, hey, if the town had a requirement that you needed to before you get a demolition permit, you would have to also look into deconstruction and the options there. You know, it would slow down the process a little bit by a few days, you know, to kind of explore those things. Is that something you could live with? I mean, are you doing those things already, but just doing them maybe informally? So I mean, that might, you know, those kind of questions might help to inform where to go next in the process. I think ultimately there will be something that will go before town council asking for their support, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Do we want to think, or like, are we thinking about any building, or do we want to kind of do the residential versus commercial segmentation, just because they're probably different contractors and everything's different about the materials and so on? Or what do we think?
Maybe starting with residential would be the easier, you know, step.
It feels easier, feels more manageable.
Yeah, it might be more successful. You know, we might have some success with that, and then as we learn more, maybe moving into, I mean, it's, yeah, we've got some vacant buildings now, so we don't, yeah, what's going to happen to them? I mean, we kind of want to address things so that we don't end up having those buildings leveled without anything considered beforehand.
Meaning the
Right, and that's, I'm sorry, Lynn. That's also, you know, talking about schools that are sitting there empty, that's a town thing, you know. When somebody does, you know, most people, you know, they have new construction, you know, I mean, they're building a new house, they buy a piece of land to build a new house. I don't know how much do we know when people are renovating houses? I mean, depending, I guess, on the size of the renovation, you would either need to get building permits to do certain things, or, you know, it's an existing structure, and, you know, I think a lot of times people just do whatever they do, you know. So it's, and that would be hard for us to track unless, you know, like, how do we find out whether, you know, alterations to a house or somebody's putting in a whole new kitchen? Would we even know what they do with the old kitchen, you know, with the cabinets? I mean, I know that you can take it to like Habitat for Humanity when Bill was still in the building business. And we had extra stuff like, you know, orders that windows that didn't fit or whatever, like Ginny was saying earlier. So we took a lot of that stuff to Habitat for Humanity and, you know, just donated it. And, you know, those things were all in good shape, like light fixtures, you know, that people decided they had picked it up and then didn't want it or whatever. So to me, like the school buildings that are sitting there vacant, who makes the decision about what happens to those buildings and whether they're just going to get knocked down, or are we going to, I know at SWAC we talked when the new elementary school was being built about, you know, what happens to all the stuff that was in the old school, and, you know, but I think that I don't really know what happened, you know, what the ultimate outcome was of, you know, the furniture and the sinks and all that stuff, whether that just, you know, got taken to a landfill somewhere, or so it would be nice to do it to do something with the other school buildings that are sitting vacant now, before they make a decision that they're going to just knock it down and haul it away, and, you know.
The town council has the last say on
Okay.
what's going to happen with those buildings. And I don't think if they've got it on their agenda yet. It has come up because there was some great ideas from the third graders and that wrote to the town council several letters stating different ideas that they had. And some of it was changing it into senior housing. Some of it was to change it into a rec area or something like that. And I don't think it's on their radar yet to think of what they're going to do with them. Because that is the number one question all around town. What are they going to do with the schools?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think the only, reusing of buildings, when the Mansfield Training School shut down, well, then UConn took over a lot of those buildings, and, there was, and then the prison was in there, and, so, but that's all state properties.
Yeah.
So, I would think, that the vacant schools would be an opportunity for us to get maybe something like, give that some thought as to what we would like to see in terms of deconstruction. And like the other ones, like I said before, Lynn, I don't know, you were saying something about that you're renovating buildings or houses. And so you're actually in the process of doing some of that stuff and reusing materials from other places to do that. So yeah, man.
There are
It's
a lot of
tough-
places yeah. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I started late and then I have to leave in a couple minutes, but I wonder about getting started, like you were suggesting, Ginny, with talking to the people who do this all the time, and getting some information from, I know the word stakeholder is problematic to some people, but those are the stakeholders, right, are the contractors that are doing this work. So maybe if there's a way that we could, for next steps, to reach out to maybe them, and then also, I don't know, who on the town side would be a good person to talk to next, or invite to the next meeting that we have, or are we not at that place yet?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I have to run at 6 also. So what if we set a goal of reaching out to contractors? Of course, I think we need to first we have to identify how do we find them, and then we need to develop some kind of questionnaire so there's consistency if a bunch of us are asking questions, so we're not wasting their time, and don't want to raise fears about regulation and whatever before we get into it. So maybe we could dig in on that at a next meeting.
Mhm.
And if Ginny, if you have thoughts on how we would connect with contractors or find them. And then I think we could do a parallel path of just maybe a policy statement that we suggest to the town at some point as a holding pattern, or at least getting our word in there on any future deconstruction of municipal buildings, that this be considered and they use the resources before, just as something, a kind of a statement. We could talk about that at a next meeting. What do people think?
Your plan. That sounds great.
Sounds good.
The other thing that I can dig up is some kind of waste. Some communities have contractors fill out a waste report. So what's
Oh.
recycled? So I'll pull something like that out. I mean, that at least provides information
Yeah,
to give us some guidance on, well, what is being generated. So it's
Okay.
6 o'clock. So
Sounds like a great plan.
all right. Thank you so much, everyone. This is
Thank you,
important.
everyone. Nice to meet you, Susanna.
Nice to meet you too, Susanna.
Okay.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
night,
Have a good
everyone.
evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.